The following is a class given by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj on April 27th, 1980 at Murari Sevak Farm in Mulberry, Tennessee. The class begins with a reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th Canto, Chapter 21, verse 9 through 23.
Translation. When the demonic followers of Maharaja Bali saw that their master, who had been determined in performing sacrifice, had lost all his possessions to Vamanadev, who had taken them away on the plea of begging 3 paces of land, they were very angry and spoke as follows. Translation. When the demonic followers of Maharaj Bali saw that their master, who had been determined in performing sacrifice, had lost all his possessions to Vamanadev, who had taken them away on the plea of begging 3 paces of land. They were very angry and spoke as follows. Navayang Brahma Bandhur Vishnu Maya Vinang Vara Dvijarupa Patichanno Devakaryang Chikirshati. Translation. This Vamana is certainly not a Brahmana. This Vamana is certainly not a Brahmana, but the best of cheaters, Lord Vishnu. Assuming the form of a Brahmana, he has covered his own form, and thus he is working for the interest of the demigods. This Vamana is certainly not a Brahmana. But the best of cheaters, Lord Vishnu. Assuming the form of a Brahmana, he has covered his own form. And thus he is working for the interest of the demigods. Text 11. Anena yachamanena satruna vaturupina sarvashwang no hritang bhartur nyasta dandasya barhisi. Translation. O our Lord, Bali Maharaja, because of his position, our Lord Bali Maharaja, because of his position in performing the yajna, has given up the power to punish. Taking advantage of this, our eternal enemy Vishnu, dressed in the form of a brahmachari beggar, has taken away all his possessions. Translation. Our Lord Bali Maharaja, because of his position in performing the yajna, has given up the power to punish. Taking advantage of this, our eternal enemy Vishnu, dressed in the form of a brahmachari beggar, has taken away all of his possessions. Let me just read through without repetition. Text 12 is Satyavartasya Satatang Dikshitasya Visheshata Nanritang Abashitum Sakyam Brahmanyasya Dayavata. Translation. Our Lord Bali Maharaja is always fixed in truthfulness, and this is especially so at present, since he has been initiated into performing a sacrifice. He is always kind and merciful toward the Brahmanas, and he cannot at any time speak lies. Tasmarasya badodharma bhartu susrushanang chaya chana itya yuddha nijagrihur baleranu charasura. Therefore, it is our duty to kill this Vamanadev, Lord Vishnu. It is our religious principle and the way to serve our Master. After making this decision, the demonic followers of Maharaja Bali took up their various weapons with a view of killing Vamanadev. Text 14. Te sarve vamanang hantung Sulapatti Sapanaya Anichanto Valerajan Padravan Jatamanyava. Translation. O king, the demons, aggravated by their usual anger, took their lances and tridents in hand, and against the will of Bali Maharaj, they pushed forward to kill Lord Vamanadev. Tan abhijavato dishtva ditijani kapanipa prahasyanuchara Vishnu pratyashedham udayudaha. O king, when the associates of Lord Vishnu saw the soldiers of the demons coming forward in violence, they smiled. Taking up their weapons, they forbade the demons to continue their attempt. Nanda sunandata jayo vijaya prabhalo bhala kumuda kumudakshascha vishwakshena patatriyat jayanta sutadevascha pushpadanto tasatvata sarve nagayuta pranas jamung te jagnorasurim. Translation. Nanda Sunanda Jaya Vijaya Prabhala Bala Kumuda Kumudaksha Vishwakshena Patatrirat Garuda Jayanta Sutadeva Pushpadanta and Satvata were all associates of Lord Vishnu. They were as powerful as 10,000 elephants, and now they began killing the soldiers of the demons. Hanyamanan Swakan Drishtva Purushanucharai Bali Varayamasa Sangrabdan Kavyasapa Manusmaram. When Bali Maharaj saw that his own soldiers were being killed by the associates of Lord Vishnu, he remembered the curse of Sukracharya and forbade his soldiers to continue fighting. Hey Viprachite, hey Raho, hey name sruyatang vacha mayudyata nivarta dvang nana kalo yang artakrit. O Viprachiti, O Rahu, O Nemi, please hear my words. Don't fight. Stop immediately, for the present time is not in our favor. Ya Prabhu Sarvabhutanang Sukhaduko papattaye tanganati vartitung daitya paurushayarishvara puman. O Daityas, by human efforts no one can supersede the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can bring happiness and distress to all living entities. Yo no bhavayo pragashit abhavaya divaukasham saeva bhagavanadya vartate tad viparyayam. The supreme time factor, which represents the Supreme Person, was previously in our favor and not in the favor of the demigods. But now, that same time factor is against us. Balena Sachivair Buddhya Durgair Mantra Ushadadivi Samadivir Upayaischa Kalam Natyeti Vaijana. No one can surpass the time representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material power, by the council of ministers, by intelligence, by diplomacy, by fortresses, by mystic mantras, by drugs, by herbs, or by any other means. Text 23. Bavad bir nirjita yete bahusho nucharahare daive nardhaista evadya yuddhi jitva nadantina. Previously being empowered by Providence, you defeated a great number of such followers of Lord Vishnu. But today those same followers, having defeated us, are roaring in jubilation like lions. Translation with repetition. Previously being empowered by Providence. You defeated a great number of such followers of Lord Vishnu. But today those same followers, having defeated us, are roaring in jubilation, like lions. Purport. Bhagavad Gita mentions 5 causes of defeat or victory. Of these 5, Daiva, Providence, is the most powerful. nacha daivat param balam. Bali Maharaja knew the secret of how he had formerly been victorious because Providence was in his favor. Now, since that same Providence was not in his favor, there was no possibility of his victory. Thus, very intelligently, he forbade his associates to fight. Thus end the purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai! Bali Maharaja ki Jai! Ramana Dev ki Jai! Vishwakshena ki Jai! Vishnu Parshad ki Jai! Sangaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai! So, today we're reading the history of Bali Maharaja's post-capture era. How the demons had defeated the demigods because the will of Providence was on their side is well documented. Now we see that the time has changed. So Bali Maharaj was intelligent enough to see that when the time is against you, there is no use in wasting time and trying to fruitlessly preserve a lost position. This understanding of how time is working is something which modern man could well use. Unless one is able to get on the good side of Providence, there is no hope. If the American people think that always the good Providence will be on their side just due to some birthright, then they are foolish. Similarly, if any other people think that way, they are foolish. There is a secret for keeping Providence on one's side. The one secret, Bali Maharaj, how he got good Providence on his side was by performing Vishnu Bhakti, by performing Vishnu Yajna, rather. Sacrifice to Vishnu. Yajnavai Vishnu. By performing sacrifice to Vishnu, he was able to succeed. If there's any secret for the American nation's success, I would assume that that secret must be the religious fervor and austerity and sacrifice which the forefathers had originally performed in the United States when forming this country and worshipping in churches, which was why they originally had prayers in every church, in every school, and why even on the money today it says, "In God we trust." As the people become more materialistic and think that there's no reason to do sacrifice to God, then Providence will turn on them, as it has in any other great kingdom or great empire or great nation in the past. Providence does not stay with one for long. However, we see here that the demigods lost one time. Even the demons were able to win when they performed the sacrifice to Vishnu, to Krishna. But actually, the devotees that were mentioned here, the personal army of Vishnu, who are not demigods, they are personal associates of Vishnu. Nanda Sunanda Jaya Vijaya Prabala Bala Kumura Kamuraksha Vishwakshena and Patatrirat Jayanta Sutadeva Pushpadanta and Satvata. You see, they are the personal army of Vishnu. You've heard of Jai Vijay before. These are all very great devotees in the temples of Ramanuja who worships Narayana and Mahavishnu. You'll find deities of all these soldiers of Vishnu, especially Vishwakshena, Garuda, Jai Vijay, and other gatekeepers. They're all glorified in these temples. Vishaksena, they say, is the commander-in-chief. There's 7 gateways. So the outer gate and the second, third, fourth, like that, there's the different gates. So depending on which gate they're at, there's 2 for each. And they have names like Jai, Vijay, Bala, Subala, like that type. So these associates, of course, they're simply serving Vishnu for his pleasure, therefore they don't lose. When they enter into the fight, then it means it's already over. But we see that Indra, even he sometimes loses. Because although Indra is an associate, he also is an associate of Vishnu. He's a devotee of Vishnu with material desires, while these others basically are not. Someone with material desires is always subject to forget his position in relation to Vishnu. And if that happens, just as Indra committed a great offense against his spiritual master, Brihaspati, then one time even Indra became a pig. Sometimes Indra gets defeated. Sometimes different things happen, because when someone is enjoying this material energy, the material energy has a way of intoxicating one and making one forget his relation with Krishna and making one neglect the devotional service to Vishnu. And thus, if someone else does like Bali Maharaja did great sacrifice, then he developed more sukriti, he developed more pious strength. These great warriors in the battlefield of Kurukshetra or the Ramayana, it was not simply physical prowess. It's not physically possible for someone to have the strength of 10,000 elephants. 16-year-old boys would go in the battlefield and fight against you. Why? They would perform huge tapasya, these kshatriyas. Arjuna stood on his I believe it was on his toes also, just like Hiranyakashipu, for a similar, not exactly the same, I believe he stood on one leg or something. It was a very difficult penance, meditation, to worship Lord Shiva, to get from him some special weapons. The Kshatriyas would do special penances and get special divinely empowered weapons, missiles, chariots, all different kinds of equipment, plus even mystic powers and divine blessings. This was the way the Kshatriyas, they would come veritably armed with all type of supernatural powers and supernatural weapons into these wars. That's why you could see like Abhimanyu, a 16-year-old boy, he could fight with so many Maharatis and they could fight ordinarily, just ordinary foot soldiers, thousands and thousands. They could fight against Akshahini. So it was dependent upon not only the military training, which was also part, but even the military training was based upon controlling airs, knowing mantras. They were able to control so many subtle factors of their body. In this way, these Maharatis and Atiratis and Ratis, who were able to fight against hundreds, thousands, and even tens of thousands of people, depending on their... It wasn't only that they just were... was it Bruce Lee's or something that learned karate? You see, they were actually accomplished type of yoga practice for developing these powers, and thus they had willpower over matter. They had developed certain mystic power. They had these weapons were imbibed with various type of mystic power, and this way their fighting was highly technical and highly empowered. They got the blessings of Krishna or of demigods, and this way they were able to fight and become invincible. Just like Hiranyakashipu, he got the blessing that he couldn't be killed by day or by night, by land or in the sea. Ravana, he had some blessing like that he couldn't be killed by any demigod or by any by any demon, any animal. No, man is insignificant. He didn't think that to ask that a man couldn't kill him. He was too puffed up. So he said any demigod and any demon. And maybe, I think that was all he was worried about. You see. So he never said man. So Rama, he appeared as a man. Krishna appeared as Rama, and that was his pastime as a man. Krishna is his pastime as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Rama is his pastime as a man. Vamana is his pastime as a Brahmana. Matsya is his pastime as a fish. Varaha is his pastime as a boar. Kurma is his pastime as a tortoise. You see, in each species he comes. So his pastime as a human was Rama. So that's why he only accepted one wife. He didn't himself do so many, just like Krishna expanded it 16,000 times to enter into his palaces, and then 1,000,000 times to dance with the gopis, and Krishna did, you won't find as many, apart from floating the rocks and a few things. Generally Ramachandra, he played the role as if he were a human being, so that he could get through the loophole in Ravana's benediction to kill Ravana. But of course, actually, he was Krishna, come as a human being, as Ramachandra. He was the perfect king. And also the monkeys, because they were animals, so monkeys and humans were fighting against Ravana. Of course, other than Ravana, the other Rakshasas and they didn't have any protection. So anyway, that's the point, is that just like Indrajit and these other men with Ravana, other great Rakshasas, they were also worshipping and doing puja for Durga, Kali, different, to get certain powers so that they could fight. This was the natural way that these warriors would get, superpowers to be able to fight. Otherwise, you can be 2 times or 3 times or 5 times or even maybe 10 times more than another person. How can you be, even in Calcutta, they have special guards at the jute mills. Jute mills are like big factories that they produce. They take the jute and make carpets and things like that. So I went to one jute mill, and they had 12,000 employees working 3 shifts, 24 hours a day. So then I went there, and then the personnel manager introduced me to all the guards, who were all from other states. And the point about the guards, he said, this guard, he can take on 6 men. This one can take on 10. This one can take on 15, and this one can take on 25. They're strike busters. If the laborers try to do a strike, then one of these guys can take on so many. Accordingly, they were being paid. But, I think 20 or 25 was the maximum that they could boast of. But that was, 25. Apparently the guy was pretty wild. So anyway, dovetailing in material service, the propensity of fighting. But we can see that, how a person can be as powerful as 10,000 men or 10,000 elephants. It was, of course, these Kshatriyas were huge and massive and had so much strength, but physically, at the same time, the actual superiority they would gain they would actually perform austerities and sacrifices. So, whether they were demons or whether they were devotees, the Kshatriyas, it's one of the rules that Kshatriyas are supposed to worship demigods. The devotees, Kshatriyas, they worship demigods as parts of Vishnu, especially the kings, just to establish the society. in the past, they used to maintain that type of worship. It was allowed. But they would worship Krishna or Vishnu in the supreme position. And the demons, they generally wouldn't worship Vishnu. Bali Maharaj, being a devotee of Krishna, was an exception. He worshipped Vishnu, thus it was more easy for him to defeat Indra. The thing is that without the blessings of Krishna, without Providence on one side, then it's not possible at all to succeed. One may have a good streak for 100 years, or 1,000 years. It's known in history, as far as we can know, that there were so many big empires, when they became hedonistic, when they became materialistic, they all decayed. They all fell apart. You know how the Romans were eating and then vomiting and again eating again and doing all kinds of things. And any civilization that becomes very materialistic, they fall apart. So, in the same way, the cultures that are on this world today, if they just become materialistic and lose touch with the spiritual purpose of life, then they'll fall apart. And if somebody thinks that educating the people in the values of spiritual life is a waste of time, those people are very foolish, because it's the only thing which is going to protect the human civilization on this planet. Otherwise, the civilizations fall as they've always fallen in the past. And people like to say that history repeats itself. Then why can't they understand that unless there's a spiritual rejuvenation, that today these big countries, especially like America, they're going to fall because of becoming more and more materialistic, unless the people turn around and become spiritualized. So, when the time is against one, then it's useless to make a big offensive. That's another moral of this thing, is that when time is against you, then you should rather gather your strength and dig in, so to speak. To make an offensive, one has to have some reserved strength. And if another person is very strong, and it's like the moth going into the fire. So similarly, at different times, one has to be able to read what is the present situation. And when is the time to dig in, and when is the time to expand, when is the time to make a strong offensive. Just like Srila Prabhupada said, that someone prematurely thinks to enter into some kind of an offensive action, then the stronger party can destroy that person. So one has to be able to understand when is the proper time and make accordingly the offensive move, or conversely the defensive move. So at this time, Bali Maharaj could correctly understand the time is against me, and these fools, why they're attacking Vishnu? You cannot defeat Vishnu. Vishnu's materialistic associates like Indra, we may defeat them because they're very puffed up, and if they make mistake, we can defeat them. That's possible. But we can't defeat Vishnu himself, so he's calling off his men. And Bali Maharaj, as the king of the demons, he's taking his material duty as being a king of the demons, and he's fulfilling that. As the king of the demons, he's supposed to fight against the demigods. Alright, so he fought against them. Now he lost, so now he's telling not to fight. But actually at heart, he's a devotee. But if he didn't take the role of being the king of the demons, if he didn't fight against the demigods, if he didn't do, then he would no longer be the king of the demons. He couldn't have any authority. So he had to take that particular role, which was his birthright. And in that role, now we can see that in the future it's Vishnu's plan that you're a devotee, you're the king of the demons, now you will engage the demons in the sacrifice of Vishnu. you'll engage the demons in devotional service. So even the demons can be engaged as devotees of Vishnu. Vishnu is actually impartial, but the demons, they think that the Supreme Lord is favoring the demigods. Actually, the Lord favors the demigods in material affairs, because in material affairs, the demigods confirm. The demigods support Vishnu's plan. And the demons, they always oppose Vishnu's plan in the material affairs for their own sense gratification. The demigods, they want sense gratification, but they want it. At the same time, they respect and accept the supremacy of Vishnu. While the demons, they don't accept that anyone is supreme. They're basically like Mayavadis. They think that no one ultimately is supreme. Vishnu is also somehow or another not supreme. This is their misconception. There's no supreme God. Ultimately, they're simply laws of nature or some kind of evolution or something. Vishnu may be on the top of the ladder, but they can also become Vishnu one day in the future, something like that. This is the basic idea of the demons. Much like we find today that people think that there's no God, God is dead, that we'll become immortal, or we can become all-powerful. The demonic civilization has a similar idea today. So in this world, Prabhupada said, there's always these demons and there's the demigods. And the demons and the demigods, they're the bad and the good. They're always opposed against each other. But actually, Krishna is neutral. He's actually not on either side. But for material affairs, if the demigods, they ask him to help, so he'll help them. And as a general rule, the demons, they won't ask Krishna to help because they don't have faith in Krishna. So he doesn't help. But actually he's neutral. And in spiritual matters, whether a person is a demigod or a demon, by birthright or by nature, if the person surrenders to the Lord, he'll give him shelter. Just like Bali Maharaja was ultimately given shelter, Prahlad, and so many others. Chitraketu, when he took birth again as a demon, then we could see that how, as a demon, what was his name as that demon? Vishnu. Vitasur. Vitrasur. That he was preaching pure Krishna consciousness to Indra. While Indra was concerned about maintaining his material position as the king of heaven, Vitrasur was simply trying to do his duty, which was he was conjured up as the enemy of, as Indra's enemy or whatever, and he wanted to actually go back to Godhead, and he understood that was the real purpose of life, was to develop pure shelter of Krishna. So, in this way we see a strange situation where the good and the bad are opposed to each other. In the long run, Providence always stands with those, even materialists, who are actually of the demigod nature, who believe in God and who perform sacrifice to God. But if they neglect God, if they neglect to worship and follow religious principles, they become more materialistic, they start acting just like the demons. Then the demons, who are generally just a shade less powerful than the demigods, then they get the upper hand. Krishna allows that to happen so that the demigods get reminded again that they have to take shelter of Krishna. So we're seeing the scene set where, although still they haven't taken off the coins in God we trust in America, but people more and more are becoming dependent upon their money, upon their strength. And so as a result, we hear that how the dangers in so many fronts are increasing. But they still can't see the writing on the wall. Unless they actually depend and simply surrender to God, to Krishna, that they won't stand it, that they'll have to suffer great losses at the hands of demons in order to bring them around again to understand that without the shelter of Krishna there's no shelter at all. This material shelter is just like a sand castle that can fall at any moment. So actually the devotees, they're completely neutral. The devotees are completely neutral. It appears that devotees are demigods, but actually the devotees are simply personal agents of Krishna. You see, they're neither the agents for the good guys or the agents for the bad guys. They're willing to help good guys and bad guys, anyone become Krishna's devotees. The demons, they thought, oh, these are the enemies. This is the enemy, Vishnu, and his personal associates. And so if they attack Vishnu, naturally then the devotees, they also defend Krishna, and they kill demons who attack. Generally the devotees won't attack Vishnu, it's just the demons that attack. Even in a society of demigods, someone may be influenced by demoniac mentality. So we can see that these similar things happen even today in the world. We should not identify with the demigods, nor should we misidentify with the demons. We shouldn't identify with either the demigods or the demons. We should identify with Krishna. We should identify with the devotional service to Krishna, with being Krishna's personal agent, personal servant. This is our program. So that's why for the devotee, it doesn't make a lot of difference what happens in the world. Of course, a devotee wants that demigods should win if the demigods will establish actual God consciousness in the world. But if the demigods become overcome by demoniac mentality, then it's very hard to differentiate. But in general, the devotees want to see the rule of God consciousness in the world. Therefore, they work to that end, wherever or however it can be achieved. So in that regard, Srila Prabhupada wrote so many different articles, Krishna conscious communism. He also wrote articles on America's heritage, that in any way that Krishna consciousness could be established, that God consciousness could be established, that we're willing to advise any group, whether they're apparently demigods or apparently demons, that ultimately if they become devotees, then they become greater even than the demigods, they become sadhus. But, of course, generally speaking, the demigods are the ones who accept God consciousness, and even though it's offered to demons, by the very nature of their mentality they fail to accept it, and thus they lose. But the devotees are so liberal, they're willing to offer both demigods and demons the opportunity. The demigods wouldn't think of offering an opportunity to the demons, because there's that enmity, but the devotees are very liberal in this regard. They're willing to offer even an enemy a chance to become a devotee. That's why great souls like Narada Muni are considered to be greater than the demigods, because they're so liberal that they'll go even to the demons and offer them opportunity to be developed as pure devotees of the Lord. So in this age of Kali, the demonic influence is very great. It's so great. Kalo doshe nidhi rajan hasti yaka mahanguna. That there's no good quality. It's an ocean of faults. There's no good quality except one. Hasti yaka mahanguna. Aka. One great quality. And that quality is not an ordinary